thank you very much. This is Sue from the Empowered Light Holistic Expo, and we're at the Codes of Awakening event in Orlando, Florida. And tonight we have a Q&A event here with John DeSouza, Brad Johnson, and Jason Quitt. Any question goes. Thank you so much for your attendance and exciting answers.
Thank you.
Who has a question?
All right.
Okay. John DeSouza. Okay. Off the record of being a former FBI agent, what is your personal opinion about 9/11, the weapons that were used, when we might look to full public disclosure, and anything else you can add?
For 9/11, to me, it seems, well, it became very obvious as in 2001, when 9/11 happened, and we had the great terrorist attack incident that occurred during that time. It started becoming evident as the investigation went on that three buildings were knocked down, and they started doing the search through those buildings, and they didn't find not a single scrap of any airplane, airliner, anything in any of those buildings, in the rubble, in the wreckage of any of those buildings. So all the investigators started looking at each other, especially NTSB, the airport authority, NTSB, I think, and right away they knew that there were not airliners, despite the evidence of our senses, despite what we saw, despite what we heard, despite what we all saw. Apparently there were no airliners that went into those buildings, because it is not possible for every piece of those airliners to simply disappear. Every seat cushion, every nose cone, every jet engine, every black box, it's just not possible. It's not physically possible, not in our physical world. And if you have any doubts of that, you need to look up a group on the internet called Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. A bunch of scientists and engineers who have proof positive that what I am telling you right now is true. So, going to your question, what that means is there was technology used, not just one set, not just holographic, because it was something more than holographic. It was several layers of technology that was used on that day that we don't even have an understanding of. We don't have it was technology that is in the hands of the cabal that they have, that even the nations don't have, but the cabal has it. And they used it on that day. And there were many layers of reasons behind it, but one of the reasons that they used it that day was to show all the nations that if they don't fall into line behind the central banking systems and stop resisting them, that this occurrence could occur in any one of their nations as well. And the other problem with that is we're going to be seeing that technology again sometime soon. And I believe we're going to be seeing it again when we have an event called Fake Alien Invasion. Yeah. And that's when I believe we are going to see 9/11 times 1,000. And so we need to, and that's one of the reasons we have to undo the cabal. That's one of the main reasons, because that is coming, and it's coming soon. So that's the best answer I can give to that.
Any other questions or answers from you, Jason, or anything you'd like to add?
From that?
Yeah.
No.
Brad?
No, we're good.
All right, here's my comment. 9/11 was supposed to be much bigger than it was, and some of those components were somehow foiled. All right? So I don't want to give away any of John's presentations, but intuitively, I got a hit a day before it happened. And I didn't understand what was going to happen, but I knew it was going to be nationwide. And so we only really had 2 locations, but it was going to be much bigger. And John might be able to tell you more details on that tomorrow.
I will.
Yep. Yes. All right, next question.
Hi, it's really more of a follow-up question. So if this was not actually orchestrated by the U.S. government and it was the cabal, why did they choose to do it on American soil? Because from what I understand, the cabal is not necessarily associated with the United States.
Well, the United States is one of the nodes. I don't know if that's the right way to describe it. It's like think of it like a crown. London is one of the centers worldwide for the cabal. Another center is Belgium. Exactly. The Vatican is another center of the node. But the United States, Washington, D.C. is another one of those nodes. So, yeah, that is the reason why. And also, it's because the United States, Washington, D.C., is the center for political power of the nations. Political and military power of the nations. And 9/11 was shown as a lesson to the nations to tell them, to show them that, hey, your power is nothing compared to the power that we have, we the cabal have, and the technology we have at our command. That's why it was done in the United States.
I just
See with the New York Times, what's going on?
No, I mean, I just know that for the video, you need me, like, if I was to not have this, you wouldn't pick it up.
She is with the New York Times.
I'm not. And
It's not epoch.
Yeah, no, I
United
hate
States,
when that happens.
Washington, D.C., London. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. Lay it on us.
All right, about the dodecahedron, Jason, I think maybe this question would be directed to you because it was your presentation, and Sue mentioned it could be used to amplify things, but the idea that around 2022, there's with the pyramids on Earth interfacing with the grid code. This is actually what I was going to mention yesterday when Adronis was being channeled, but I was told that we don't, this information. It's about the dodecahedron structure around the Earth around 2022 interfacing in order to make everybody on Earth, for all intents and purposes, get along better than they otherwise would if that dodecahedron and pyramid interface was not done by 2022. That's what I wanted to ask about.
Okay. Well, I haven't heard this specific information, but I can answer this question. There has been a lot of people that I've heard of, I can't remember the names specifically, that would talk about the different Earth grids being activated in the future with the pyramid grid. And the dodecahedron is the symbol of space, ether. It's also the sacred geometry that will almost put us into another dimension, almost. So I personally never put time frames. That is just me. I never put a time frame to anything. And I believe that the geomagnetic field of the Earth, the etheric grids of the Earth that are connected through the pyramid system, through the ley lines of the Earth, they go in and out of activation depending on the geomagnetic strength of the field, depending on the solar winds, depending on of where it is in the universe. So to answer your question is really, I can't answer that question, but can it make us feel better? I think changing the geomagnetic structure, activating the pyramid grids, activating the grids on the Earth can have a tremendous effect on human consciousness. I can't say if it's positive or a negative effect because all humans are different, but I would like to believe that that could happen to bring us into a stronger alignment.
Just to add to that idea as well, too, is that is true because that can go into a very strong alignment. But it's kind of like how a person metamorphosizes through the means of a fever, right? We basically have to go through our fever. We have to go through this intense period first before we can basically harmonize with that particular type of geometry. So I think that the idea of working with a dodecahedron is powerful, is intense, and can be wonderful, but it's kind of like what everything else that's been happening on this planet firstly is going through. We're going through intense times first that is eventually going to tranquilize and neutralize in that way. So even though that can come about, we're still going to go through some rough tides first because we have to go through this fever firstly before we come into a state of full metamorphosis. You're going through it now. Everybody can heal quickly or take longer based upon one's own subjective reality.
So I remembered about 5 seconds after she walked over here. Me again, the New York Times reporter here. Okay, so in your opinion, because you can hear a lot of people's feedback on what they think the most important thing that everybody can do, where do you think the most important power that the cabal derives, and how can we try and take that from them to destabilize them?
Well, to my way of thinking, the most important power, and the most important power that they have, the cabal has, is the power we have seen them exercise all the time. For instance, when JFK was killed, and it is the power to make the nations stand down. Like for instance, you heard the old slogan, 911 was an inside job. 911 was an inside job. Well, 911 is not an inside job because federal government doesn't have the power to do the things that happened on 9/11. However, what they do is that the cabal orders certain national organizations like JFK, when JFK was killed and the Secret Service stood down. They stood down. That is the corruption and the cooperation from the nations that happens with the cabal. And that is how they are so successful in these multi-level operations that they run all the time, because they move forward these operations in places that they have tremendous control, like the state of California, where we see all these fires being used to burn down a large portion of the state. Or like another area of globalist control, Australia, where we see these fires being run, and local authorities being ordered to stand down. So that is unfortunately the greatest power that the cabal has, and the only way to get over that, to take away that power, is to overthrow the cabal, which is the struggle that we're involved in right now. That's the only way.
John, what about mind control? Like peer pressure and influence that, we're being programmed a certain way. And if somebody steps a toe out of line, we, the people, bring that person back in a line.
Yeah, that's the 99 Monkeys.
Peer pressure.
It's the media. That's the media. That's the culture. That's the culture. That is unfortunately all the wrong filters that people use. The people use to examine their reality. And it's still going on now because people are using the wrong filters. They're using political filters. They're using religious filters, scientific filters, and none of those are appropriate. We need to throw those off. And it's all misdirection. It's all based on misdirection. Absolutely.
I had two questions. One of them was about 9/11, but this one is about consciousness. And so if we create our own reality with all of our thoughts, so right now I'm creating you, the three of you sitting on that stage. I'm creating my chair, how I'm feeling right now. I'm creating my own reality. Excuse me? Oh. So how is it possible that there's energy attachments? If I'm creating my own reality, how can something beyond me really be affecting me? Unless at a cosmically, some soul level, I'm giving it permission by, my energy field, my previous agreements throughout my life where, that I took on. What's the difference between those two things?
Well, see, there's a misperception about creating your reality. Creating your reality comes to the state of choice, not through the idea of you actually having the memory that you're creating that chair, that you're creating this table, that you're creating everybody here. It's not about that. Everything is available to you right now. Because everything is right now, everything is creatable right now. So you're experiencing this room, you're experiencing this reality, you're experiencing me talking about a Starbucks coffee cup. But the whole idea is that really what you're doing is that your value of choice is the idea of how you perceive reality. So what you choose in life becomes your creation. Your vantage point is the idea of what you are perceiving and what you are creating. So basically when a person says you create your reality, yes, that's true, but you're allowing yourself to walk a particular path. You're not the one that is basically building atom by atom this particular table to make it into being. It's already here. So everything is already available to you. It's your perceptions of choice that designate that magnetic that you're working with to determine what your reality means. Does that make sense? So your choices are what matter. Your choices are what bring reality together. It's not about having to manifest everything out of thin air. Can you manifest a loaf of bread right in your hands right now? Go ahead. You can't, right? It's your choices that are making that happen. Your choices about how you want to live, about who you want in your life, about where you want to go on vacation, about the job that you want to do, what your personality is like. All of that is based upon the premise of your nature of choice.
And I'll just add to this. We all know that there is laws that we're governed by. There's universal laws that we're in right now. So to try to manifest a reality or to choose a reality, you have to also understand that you're bound by these laws first. So it's like if you jump off a bridge and then you wish really hard to manifest that you're just going to land on your feet, it's probably not going to happen the way you want because you're bound by these general laws first. So when we call freedom of choice, there's paths in our world that we're born into where we have a path of destiny of where we're going in life, which is what we've chosen before we've come here. And then we come into this world with karma, what we call karma, which is cause and effect, things that maybe even cellular memory, ancestral memory, and these things basically pull us along a pathway. So freedom of choice is, let's say, I'm going to work and heal and let go of certain karmic energies that are pulling me in certain directions in life. And these are choices of free will, like you were talking about. Mm-hmm. And once we heal those choices, suddenly it frees us up to manifest in a direction of our destiny path more. So we can use the word, we live in a holographic universe, what were holographic projections, but I really think these are just words that we're using from our understanding of what we're in right now. We don't have a language yet for what this really actually is. And in my personal opinion, what we are experiencing here is just almost like a shadow of another dimension. It's something else that's holding this all together. And those have structures and laws. And this is kind of what we're bound by. So yes, we could have freedom of choice and free will and put out what we want before we come here and then achieve it, but it cannot go against those fundamental laws that we're bound by. It's what I believe.
And to go even deeper, you have to understand that looking at it in this perspective, you yourself are a character. And there's your soul behind the scenes that already know exactly what you're going to experience in this life. Is it going to tell you everything about that? No. It needs to keep the mystery intact so that you create this quote-unquote illusion of choice. Choice is actually an illusion because everything that we're facing here in front of this reality feels genuine to us. But because it's operating at a very, very slow density, our soul operates in a plane that is so much beyond this reality. So it's kind of like looking at the idea of playing a character, like an actor playing a character, and your soul is behind the scenes knowing exactly what you're going to do, knowing exactly what you're going to carry out, and can only sprinkle a little bit of breadcrumbs here and there to giving you hints about where you go. But can it tell you the entirety of your life? I've never met a person who's been able to do that. So this is, again, just letting you know that we are playing a character, that we are involved in a type of game to helping ourselves evolve a lot more and saying, what if I did play this game where I felt separate from everybody, where I felt limited, where I had to rely on my choices, my instincts, the people that I have involved in my life? What would I become? And that, again, is what the soul is very, very interested in. It wants to see exactly what this lower fractal self can do within this reality to see how it can evolve further on that linear base level. Make sense? All right.
This is Adronis earlier told me that in my nighttime sleep state, that I'm kind of like in between sleep and sort of another stage. Do you think that it would be possible for me to use that altered state to go into something like astral projection or something like that? And how would I go about
I believe
doing
he was saying something like that, was for you to see if you can go full out. There's a very interesting video that's online for people who want to get into astral projection that I recommend. It's called Leave Your Body in 3 Days. It's a it's a video series created by Michael Raduga. He is basically behind the phase, right? You guys familiar with that? Because I hear a lot of chuckling in the audience. There's a book too. Yeah, he has a free PDF book as well too. Yeah, there's a guy that was talking because his Russian accent was so thick, and you could barely hear him in the original audio. So they have a narrator in it as well too. But it's really good. It's really great stuff. I was trying it myself, and it feels pretty great. So using something like that, going into the phase as he talks about, I think is really great. But yeah, from what Adronis was sharing is that you're already there. You just have to kind of know that you're there, and then that can move into the next step should you want to explore different dimensions. Should you want to. I mean, it's up to you. But it's available, for sure. All right.
This question is for John. Are you familiar with Andy Pero, the parapsychology in Montauk, New York, the parapsychology mind control subject named Andy Pero? Are you familiar with him?
No, I'm not.
Okay. What are your beliefs about the Montauk Project and Camp Hero and those types of that type of information on the internet? Is that real, or is it more so just other propaganda?
Well, no. I mean, the Montauk Project was real. It was, and the way that you know that is when you have so many separate sources of information that all kind of parallel each other on the same subject. Then you start. You have to take that raw data and say, this is something that really happened. This is something that it's correct, it's true. And then the real question becomes, well, what was the final version? What was the final reality of the Montauk Project, and what happens? And there's a guy on the internet named Stuart Swerdlow.
Yeah, I know him.
Who claims to have been a part of the Montauk Project, and he has a lot of information on it. And if you're interested in seeing some stuff from a possible eyewitness and participant, then his stuff is something that you want to look into.
Yeah, about that too, because someone was asking earlier about Adronis about Montauk. Was that you? Were you asking about Montauk? Okay, yeah. Yeah, and someone else was asking about the movie Contact and about the technology that was in there as well too. And I believe Adronis was talking about that the movie Contact and being able to open that gateway to Lyra was based on looking glass technology, right? Being able to create a synthetic pineal gland. So these are all fascinating topics. I'm actually Facebook friends with Stuart Swerdlow. He just actually added me recently. After a while, I had to wait a while. But I've actually read a couple of his books. He's quite good, so I would recommend him as well too. He knows what he's talking about.
My question is about My question's about the Schumann resonance and how it affects us individually and collectively.
That'd be good for you, Jason.
Okay, and first I'll just get back to Montauk and Stewart and all these people. Please look into them more carefully as well, because there's a lot of what I would consider disinformation in that topic, and be very careful. And just because one or two people come forward and tell the same story, it doesn't mean they're telling the truth. It means they're saying the same lie and getting away with it. So you have to be very careful in this community. And that's just my opinion. But, okay. Also, when it comes to the Schumann resonance, we have to first understand what the Schumann resonance is. It's cosmic radiation, it's solar radiation hitting the ionosphere of the Earth, and that the ions come down and hit, well, you know that right now there's thousands of lightning strikes on the planet hitting all over the planet, and that creates a resonance in the ionosphere and the Earth that we can measure. And the more cosmic energy that comes through, the more you have this ion exchange between the ionosphere and the Earth. And that's what we call the Schumann resonance. As that Schumann resonance raises, we have more ionization of the atmosphere. And it affects our minds. Our minds resonate our consciousness resonates in the same frequency ranges as the Schumann resonance, which is around 7.8 hertz, which is a wave. But our brains also operate from 0.1 hertz all the way up to about 70 hertz, which is gamma. So it's the same frequencies that are reflected in our consciousness in the Schumann resonance. And being awake, we're around 30 hertz, between 30 and 40 hertz. In a meditative state, we're in around 11 hertz. And as we go deeper and deeper, that's when we get into altered states of consciousness, dreaming, lucid dreaming, and a loss of consciousness completely at delta, which is about 0.5 hertz to 1 hertz. So with the influx, because if you've been watching the Schumann resonance lately, it's kind of going off the charts. I've seen it almost at 100 hertz, which is very, very high. So this could really affect our consciousness, I would say both in a positive way and in a negative way, because remember, people are fragile. And if it starts to affect our mind, if our minds are very weak, or if we have a very active mind, having a very high Schumann resonance may cause more chaos in people. Whereas if a person has a very clear mind, the Schumann resonance may actually activate different memories, gifts, dream worlds, or even healings. So it really depends on the person receiving that energy of the Schumann resonance that determines the effect of it. A mat, well, that's very good, like a pulsed electromagnetic field mat, is what you're asking? Yes, those are actually quite beneficial because remember, the human being, the human consciousness is born in the womb of Mother Earth's heartbeat, which is the Schumann resonance, which is the average, about 8 hertz. And for us, that's almost like the energy of peace. It's what we're used to. When we surround ourselves with Bluetooth, radio frequency, Wi-Fi frequency, that's in the megahertz frequencies. It's microwaves. It's a high, high frequency. So we're exposing ourselves to a type of frequency radiation that is thousands of times stronger than the Schumann resonance. Schumann resonance is geomagnetic. It's low frequency pulses. And we're surrounding ourselves with very high frequency. So when you take a low geomagnetic field frequency, like you're talking about a pulsed electromagnetic field, and laying on it, then what you're doing is you're trying to resync and calm the nervous system of the body back to the earth frequencies, which has a very healing effect to it. So we are trying to, see, this is how crazy things are these days. It's crazy. We have to invent technology to get us reconnected to nature because our nature is polluted with technology. That's how crazy we are, right?
Yeah.
So,
And we have to eat organic food so we don't get sick.
yeah, like what humans call real food.
Yeah.
Organic food is real food.
Right.
And run on your Peloton also with the nature scenes on the screen.
So we are in bizarro world, basically, is what. Yeah. Yeah. I hope that answers the question of the Schumann resonance. I think I went over that one. Okay. Okay.
Hello, guys.
Hi.
I just got a quick question. I'm sure you heard about the QAnon movement. It's supposedly, maybe you haven't, but it's supposed to be a movement that's going on with Trump and the military and just a bunch of leaders worldwide. It's supposed to take place possibly this year about exposing Hollywood and, just the corrupt government that we had in the past. So basically, my question is, what are your thoughts about that? Is that basically part of the ascension that's going to happen? So this is kind of like the spirit kind of expressing it into our physicality as that kind of movement? And who's really behind it? Is it the military? I've heard some stories it's the military. I heard some people say it's ET are involved. Just your opinion about it.
I think it's possible that it's all of the above. In 2015, we had a what's called a White Hat Alliance. Some people, I started just calling them the Allied Forces. We had a conglomerate of Allied forces, of military powers and political powers across the earth that decided that they were going to get a civilian leader to help them spearhead this fight against the cabal, the worldwide cabal, the central banking dynasties, the powers that have subjugated mankind and the nations for so very long. And in 2015, they came up with a military intelligence group that was going to be their let's put it, the worldwide voice, their worldwide voice. But it was originally thought to be it was going to be a news service, but it's not. It's actually military intelligence service, putting out information to all the allied forces across the earth that are in this global war, this global struggle. And QAnon was put together, according to a lot of information, we believe that it was a military, a general named General Flynn. General Flynn, who was the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. He was a very high up general in the United States military, and he helped. He's also a specialist in cyber warfare and information warfare, and supposedly he put together, according to sources, he put together the QAnon movement, and he also went on a tour and talked to many people and said he was giving the blessing to a movement of digital soldiers that would be fighting this QAnon, this movement, to spread information and to spread good information and sometimes bad information too, because that's how military intelligence works. And that it would be in order to help the Allied forces fight against this cabal movement that we are trying to overthrow right now. So that's what the QAnon movement is. That's what Q is. Who Q actually is. A lot of people thought. A lot of people. Unfortunately, a lot of people thought that General Flynn himself, Michael T. Flynn himself, was Q. And for that reason, the previous administration came up with this terrible operation, to try to take him down and frame him for some crimes. And it was a big catastrophe, but it was because they were desperate to stop him because they thought he was Q. It turns out he's not, but he does know who it is, and he does know how the Q movement works. So that's how Q. the Q movement started in 2015. It's continuing now, and there's been a lot of backlash against it from the cabal and from their media assets, of course, mainstream media, and that's going to continue. But Q is going to continue to move forward, and a lot of people need to listen to the best interpreters of Q drops and Q information that they can get, and it's not easy to find, but you can find them.
I feel like that's kind of like part of the, the Earth's vibration is raising right now. Right. And, you guys are talking about the exposure that's going to happen very soon. Especially Brad saying 2020, the year's exposure. And this lines up perfectly with Q, who's, he's basically putting out drops about Hollywood and different politicians. So I see the synchronicity there, which is, great to see.
Well, it's true, yeah. Jonas made predictions, I think it was in 2019, about that happening this year, and of course we're starting to see that. I think it'll probably unfold a lot more. Like I said, just be mindful of all these different groups that are here. Don't always put your 100% trust into them. They have their own agendas. It does not mean it's equal to your own agendas. So it's kind of like you're just kind of putting on rabbit ears and you're just hearing these things. But always really take it as a grain of salt, because everything can change, and because it's one person's agenda or one group's agenda doesn't mean it's yours. What's important is your work and your progress. Right?
John, another question about Q. All right, what the heck is taking them so long? We keep hearing all these things are going to happen, and they're not happening in.
Sorry, what?
All right, what is taking them so long?
Oh, I can.
Explain that to us.
Yeah, what's taking so long is this. According to all the information from Q and from very knowledgeable QAnons, which is a separate group, according to them, what is going on, and even Trump himself has kind of alluded to this as well, is that what we're doing is we are undoing the corruption and the malaise and evil of the last, well, it's mostly the last 40 years, when we have been buried under a mountain of treason, theft, murder, and it's the crimes against humanity have been committed against us. We just don't, and 9/11 is just the tip of the iceberg of treason and evil and death and genocide that's been committed against us. So what's going on is this whole system, what's taking so long is this has to be undone slowly. It has to be undone slowly, because if not, you're facing a complete psychological break in most normies. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but most of normal society will be unable to respond in a normal way when they're faced with the truth of what has happened. If all the indictments were to come all at once, all of the other things that are going to be coming in after the indictments, we're talking military tribunals, we're talking a lot of other things. If we're all to happen at once, we could be facing collapse of a lot of not just American institutions, but global institutions as well. So that's what the big delay is. That's why it seems like it's taking so long. This is a system that has been built up by the cabal for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So it can't be undone as quickly as we would like. That's what the big delay is.
I know a lot of what we're seeing is there as well, but my question is, won't the bad guys sneak away? Like, we want them to be brought to justice.
I don't think this is a global war. There's nowhere for them to sneak away. We're all here. We're all here together. And other than their, underground military bases, that's about the only. place I could see them. But no, they're as a matter of fact, it looks like a lot of the bad guys are being scooped up and released, interrogated by military tribunals, possibly because we've got a lot of ankle bracelets that are showing up on a lot of famous politicians, and you can see those. They're all around. So it looks like this is an ongoing process. And it looks like it's possible the military tribunals have already begun. It is possible. Well, John McCain. Exactly. John McCain had an ankle bracelet before he departed this world as well. But there's been many other ankle bracelets spotted even now as well. Yeah. But I would like for my favorite debunker also to speak on this, Jason Quitt.
Go ahead, disappoint everybody.
Go ahead, Jason. Crush their dreams.
Yep.
Go ahead, do it. Do it. Do it. Crush it.
Tomatoes on standby.
Oh. Really? Come on. Jeez. What can I say? I mean, for me, well, I'm Canadian, so.
Me too.
So we're on the same side here. But for me, looking at Q is like looking at Batman. Okay, you don't know who Batman is, and that gives him power. All right, so the QAnons are anonymous people. I don't know if you remember Anonymous before QAnon. Anonymous was doing very similar things, showing exactly similar to what's going on, and Q is just a continuation of this, in my opinion. I think my mic might be dying here. The cabal. Thank you. Yeah. But be very careful of the language. This is what I want everybody to, when you're reading Q and reading people talking about Q, they use a very, very specific language. And if you have a PhD in cults, not well, it's always the first thing you say is trust the leader. And whenever someone questions, well, why doesn't this happen? You said that this person was good, and then they get kicked out and are arrested. Or, why did you say this and this? But it was the complete opposite. They say, trust the plan, or you're out of the club, or we're gonna, make your life. So just be very careful of the language that's being used, and also, America is based on laws. It really is. This is an amazing country, the USA. And to be a patriot, you follow the Constitution of Rights, which is very, very important. We lawmakers look at the US and see how they've built this Constitution in this country. A lot of stuff QAnon is talking about with tribunals, basically military murder of people, taking people, all this. What these patriots are talking about is fascism. You can't be a fascist, or you can't want these things to happen and be a patriot, because patriot is based on laws. And China and all these really terrible countries like North Korea, they will kidnap these people, they will take them to military tribunals, and they will murder these people. You do not want the United States to go down that road. So please watch the language that is being used by these groups and know the difference between patriotism, laws, and fascism. Okay. So did I crush people? Did I do it? Okay. Yes, you very much need it. And by the way, if you know about 8chan, the original site, it's an anonymous message board. And if you've known about them before Q, that was the place where people would go to that wanted to stay anonymous, because it's like the trolls of the trolls of the trolls. It's like the cesspool of the internet is that website. So I tell people, I'm like, I would rather see military drops on Walmart's comment section. Well, at least one person laughed. Okay.
The rest of the population. They don't have to be put to death, but they have to be. If we have a quarantine in this area of the galaxy for the negative polarity to be here, it must be for the plan of it being rounded up. And it can't continue to be enmeshed because of the effect on humanity. So it has to be separated.
What is evil? What is negativity? What causes these people to do this harm?
I don't really care. They need to be separated from us.
And if you
This is an
separate it,
American, and we've got some Canadian stuff going on.
no, this is good. This is good.
The rabbit hole goes on forever. They need to be sequestered.
Yeah. And that's not fascism. That's just common sense. And the military tribunal system is actually completely legal. It is a system that is used to defend nations' survival when its survival is threatened. It's just a separate legal system that is perfectly legitimate to use. And it's not fascist. These guys don't even have guns. They don't believe in guns.
We use our words. I'm sorry, John. That's Canadian for hello.
We need a Second Amendment up here. Exactly. Exactly. Welcome to America. There you go. There you go.
And also, if you go through the regular judicial system, now they use lawyers to just, they can hold these cases forever in the system, legal system.
Yeah.
It take years to adjudicate.
Yeah.
But the military tribunal becomes a more efficient way of adjudicating these cases. So
Yeah.
My,
go that way. There's no other way.
but my point is that if we're living in a polarity universe right now, in this 3D reality, we experience polarity, good and evil. If we rounded up every person that we deemed evil and got rid of them or quarantined them, well, how? Right, then you're going to say the rest of the population is positive polarity?
Let's not use the word evil. Crimes against humanity.
Exactly. The human trafficking.
There
Yeah.
you go. There you go.
Getting ritual abuse. Let's start.
Okay.
That's it.
Wow.
Light the torches.
Let's start.
That's it.
I'm interested about why our Constitution.
Do you want to do this? I started to
I'm just going to talk about consciousness questions. That's all I'm interested in.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They're sending me back to Canada.
I'll ride behind.
What happened after?
After what?
Right. So we got the Patriot Act. We now have something in the United States of America where our government can come and take you and do whatever they please to you without any checks and balances. And you can disappear.
Right.
I've recently learned that Clinton signed something that said that you are now allowed to lie on national television, some law. So now we can't account on the fact that people have to make sure that they're telling the truth and they're getting, resources that are telling the truth. So, I mean, and then what was that? Obama recently, what was that? All these things are just like, when people don't know, the mainstream that never ever looks at these things.
Right.
And I'm thinking, okay, so the United States of America has this Constitution and these laws, which is great. I appreciate everything that you said about that. However, it's been subverted.
Absolutely. Our Constitution means nothing. And all the things that you just talked.
How are they getting away with this through mass media?
They're getting, because all of the things that you just talked about, the Patriot Act, all of the unconstitutional actions that went against our citizens after 9/11 that were created, this was all part of a cabal plan. This was all bringing back real fascism, not just in the United States, but this was being done in other Western nations as well. And it was a system that was put into place, the creation of the TSA and the creation of so many other Orwellian systems that were against our liberty and against our Constitution as well. They're completely unconstitutional. But that all started, of course, in when the Federal Reserve was created in 1917, and the IRS, which was created to feed the Federal Reserve private bank system as well. So we've been in an unconstitutional, you wouldn't say republic, an unconstitutional state basically since 1917, and it's only gotten worse. It's only gotten worse and worse and worse, and that's one of the reasons.
About 9/11, since this is coming up so much, recently had an intuition of sorts asking me to look at a documentary, The Assassination of William McKinley, of all things, and this ties into cycles of time and all. It's funny how William McKinley is like the only president who, the guy who assassinated him, you can't really prove that he's a patsy or someone who's in a conspiracy, and also that those events happening were exactly 100 years before the events of 9/11. Interesting thing about McKinley, he wanted the gold standard, and right after he was killed, Theodore Roosevelt became president. He was doing all the illegal stuff in the national parks and all. So then 100 years later, you got 9/11. So I'm thinking, from a cycles of time standpoint, what can we make sense of this? You got a presidential assassination, which nobody seems to know the truth of, and then 9/11 happening almost 100 years later. And what do we make sense of that? How can we make sense of that?
McKinley, every president we've had assassinated has been for the same exact reason as McKinley. Lincoln was issuing silverback dollars during the Civil War, went against central banks. And McKinley, what you just talked about, he was also involved in resisting the power of the central banks. JFK, of course, we know he was already getting returned to a gold standard on U.S. dollars. And then, Andrew Jackson kicked out he actually kept the central banks out of the United States, and they tried to kill him 3 times. 3 times he carried bullets in his body for the rest of his life because he resisted the central bank. So that's a very little known commonality between all the assassinated presidents throughout the United States. Yeah.
Okay. We're going to have one more question, then we're going to take a very short break, and then we'll come back to it. And everyone that has a question will have to use a mic from now on. All right? One more question.
Hello. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for your service to the collective. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
And I have a couple of questions. It could be for any of you all have valuable perspectives to. Starting with the work of Dr. Stephen Greer, I'm familiarized with the false flag situation, and one of the solutions that he has offered is the CE5, human-initiated interstellar contact for peaceful contact. If there's enough of us calling, then we can establish healthy, positive relations on an open platform with multidimensional civilizations and groups. I was wondering if you all have any comments or perspectives on that.
Go ahead, Jason.
All I wanted to say, no, you guys should talk on it as well, but all I wanted to say is I love Stephen Greer. I love his material, I love his work. However, I do disagree with his perspective that all alien presence or variations or visitors are always positive, no matter what. And if you have a less than positive experience, it means something's wrong with you. And I just disagree with that perspective, and I don't think it's a good perspective as far as that goes. Other than that, I love his work, and I think his work is very important.
I've done CE5 events before, and I think it's a very positive thing to just, try to make a connection. But we also have to agree with what John said as well, that it's not all positive. I've had different types of contact experience that I speak about, and it's very personal, and usually it's through telepathy or out-of-body experiences. And I think that just the fact of putting it out there that you want some type of positive experience, be it in your meditation or prayers, you don't have to be out in a field and ask for it, but put that initiation out before you go to sleep. you may have a connection to some information or contact. Because I believe the contact that is happening with the public, it's not the vision of the UFO landing at the White House. It's one-on-one interaction with an intelligence that is initiated through a type of meditation connection through your heart space and your maybe even connection through your past lives as well. So I believe that is true contact, and if enough people go through that experience, it'll change the consciousness of the planet for some type of visitation in the future. And this also goes back to QAnon and all these things as well. And what I was trying to say with evil is that the world will only change when our consciousness changes. There's corruption all over the world in different places, and it's just from the ideologies and beliefs that many people have. And so there has to be a shift in consciousness, in my opinion, for true change to take place on a mass scale. It's just my opinion, people that have power, it's rife with corruption at that level. So we have to be spiritually changed to change at that high level.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Yes, I have done CE5 events as well too. With Stephen Greer personally, I think he's a great guy. I don't really agree with any of his philosophies at all. Not really. There's just too much. There's a lot of fluff in it, really, from my own perspective. When you're looking at the idea of everything being positive in that sense, I mean, it's important that you're looking into things that complement your reality, of course. But no, you're living in a duality, so that too is important. The key here really is that you have to understand that everything that's happening on the planet right now is partitioning. We are getting different groups, everyone with their own finger in the pie, relating to this planet. Everybody's partitioning. There's people who love QAnon. There's people who love Trump. There's people who do this and people who do that. Everybody is basically getting into their own partition group. Those partition groups are going to intensify in their own way, and it runs together with the momentum. It's not about the idea that all of these groups are basically just going to come under one particular banner, and it's going to be rainbows and whiskers on kittens for everybody. There's going to be these states of partitions where people are going to go in their own way, and they say, this is exactly the momentum I want to ride out for the years to come. Right now, we're just going through a transitional cycle. Like everything, there's a lot of people who say, oh, Brad, when are we going to win? I said, well, what are we losing, right? Are we losing something? We're still alive. We're still breathing air. We're still in this body. We're still existing here on this planet. We're still getting to know each other. We're still connecting with each other. We're meeting unique people every day. Is there really a losing situation here? It's the idea that people choose to struggle. People choose to fight. People choose to retaliate. People choose to achieve. People choose to triumph. So it's not so much in the idea of a win-loss situation, because that to me is black and white. It's the whole idea that whatever you feel you want to do in life, who cares what your politicians are doing? Who cares what this is doing and that's doing? I don't relate to that world, right? I couldn't care less about politics. To me, it's just about the idea about what am I doing with my life? What can I do to help other people? What can I do to fulfill a compassion agenda? That's my agenda. So if your compassion agenda is going out into the field and connecting through C5 or any other name you want to give it, remote view of these beings, connect to different dimensions, be educated by them, do it. Don't worry about what Trump is doing. Don't worry about all these political things. It's just about the idea of staying with the momentum of where you feel you want to be. Ride that out as far and wide as you can. There's going to be a lot of changes happening in these years, yes, but in many different levels, not just political stuff, not just government stuff. We all have the ability to focus on what we want to focus on pertaining to how we partition ourselves in that group. And I'm just happy to partition myself in the group of compassion, helping you guys out, getting the word about what we have done here today, and sharing this great knowledge of healing and helping each other. It's basically getting past this reliance on governments and saying, when are they going to fix stuff? They're not going to fix stuff, guys. You're going to fix things. You're going to make things happen. You're going to make things take place. You're going to bring your own disclosure together. Stop waiting for the government to do it. Stop waiting for politics to do it. Do it yourself, right? That's really where I stand. Hashtag organic disclosure. Haha.
Thank you.
That's it. We are a family. We're all a family.
I very much resonate with what you shared. And then my last question, it was actually somewhat addressed in what you already stated, is the idea of the multidimensional realities, and that as we raise our vibration and orient our consciousness in a particular way, that's the reality that we're going to experience, that there are multiple timelines, one where certain negative things are going to occur or certain tragedies, et cetera. That, what are your thoughts on if we, as we orient our consciousness in a particular way, that we can actually experience an entirely different timeline in reality?
I really look at it in the idea there's debris consciousness and there's liberated consciousness. There's evolved consciousness and there's lack of evolution consciousness. I don't really look at things negative. I know what you're saying, but I don't look at things in black and white. I've had so many people come up to me, Brad, what about this positive time or this negative time? Like, why are you guys saying it's negative or positive, right? The whole idea is that really, does it contain something that serves you or something that doesn't? Something that evolves you or something that doesn't? You have to understand that everything, and Jonas said this today as well, reality happens from you. It does not happen to you. So again, whenever you're looking at something fundamentally negative, you're looking at something fundamentally negative because it's something that you cannot yet accept within yourself. And that's why it's lingering, right? So then you start bringing all these people and situations and events into your life to letting you know you're holding on to this, right? And things start to get hectic because there's something within yourself you just can't swallow. There's something within yourself that you haven't met with yet. There's something within yourself that just is wanting to come out, but you're not giving it the attention. So again, consciousness really is consciousness. We can put levels onto it, but it's really just about the idea of saying what serves you and what doesn't. What is it that liberates you and what's something that causes you to be stagnant? So it's like with me, I have nothing to worry about anymore, guys. And I'm not saying this to brag. I'm here for the fun of it. I'm here to enjoy this. I'm here to educate. I'm here to share this. Do I get challenges at times? Of course I do. But, it's nothing that I can't face. And that's the whole idea. Don't try to be perfect, right? Just enjoy what reality gives you. If you know you're getting challenged, then accept that challenge. It's like what I've talked about today with the EQ method or the BCR technique, right? If you guys are going through traumas, you want to just notice that those traumas are there, and you're now willing to make it happen. The greatest person that can ever exist upon the planet is the person who has constantly fallen and got back up, dusted themselves off and saying, I'm going to keep going. That is the strongest person that exists. It's not about the person who says, I make no mistakes, because that person is the most fragile of them all, because he's afraid to make a mistake. The person that has fallen has no fear anymore, because they're used to falling, and they're used to getting up, and they're used to dusting themselves off. So the consciousness that you want to evolve with, let it be in something in complement to you. Right? That's what I can share.
Listen to Brad for a second. Okay. But, we have this kind of concept where we want to go on a more positive timeline. And, a lot of us, I'll just say 100% of us, we've all had struggle in our lives, and we've all had suffering. And it's how we've overcome that which made us stronger, like you said. And it's what actually makes us more spiritually evolved to walk through that trauma and come out on the other side of it. All right, it's very important. So sometimes it's very easy to try to run away from the problems that we face in this world. And there's a lot of problems in this world. It's not just satanic things. It's not just trafficking. It's not just this. We have ecosystem collapses. We have pollution. There's so much wrong in this world. And we can't just kind of say, well, let's manifest a positive timeline. We're here physically to change it physically. If a fire is burning, we're not going to sit and meditate for it to burn out. We will run to the lake, get some water, and put it out. And that's our gift, is we're physical here, and we can actually do action. All right? So I've had terrible things happen in my life, but I'm still here. And it's made me the person that I am. And when I look back in retrospect, I wish those things never happened. Actually, no. I am so happy and grateful that those terrible things happened to me, because it made me the person that I am right now. And I think that is part of the spiritual journey in my personal opinion.
All right, we're going to get started again on round 2. Bing! So here's our first question. Oh, okay. Here's our first question.
Hi, it's me again.
New York Times.
I have a question for
Scared.
Adronis. Oh, just kidding.
Okay, so I read so much and I forget where half of this stuff comes from, so I apologize about the source because it might even be you guys up there that I read it from and I don't remember. I'm so sorry. So I remember getting some exposure to our DNA, specifically the humanity DNA, and where Earth is in relation to the entire universe, and how all of the different species within the universe has come and meddled with our DNA and I don't know, like added parts of their own to us. And in a sense, I believe that they look at us as some sort of royalty because we have all of their DNA together in our own. And are you guys familiar with any of what I'm talking about right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, good. They don't want to keep going in this route if you're like, I have no idea what she's talking about. Okay, so...
Well, the interesting thing is that really from our perspective, Earth is the center of the universe, right? Because we're the one that's experiencing the center of our own reality. So we are indeed the center of this universe from this perspective. If you were on another planet, that would be the center of your universe as well, too. So wherever your vantage point is always the center of your universe. And Adronis elaborated on this last night as well, too, in the channeling, is that he said, there is no other creator that was responsible for man's creation other than God, right? So again, everybody has a different perspective on God. When we're looking at creator beings have a certain level of contrast to them. Now, when you're looking at humanity, our contrast is almost immeasurable. And with many of these different creator beings, a lot of them had limitations placed upon them. They're very intelligent, they're very smart, they're very crafty, but they have always had limitations placed upon themselves. Therefore, you cannot have a creator being that has limited states of contrast to create a human race that has unlimited amounts of contrast. It's not possible. So everything pertaining to how humanity was created was all based upon the Most High's design. And that's going to be hard for us to understand. We're probably going to spend countless time trying to reflect on what all that is. What I have received from Adronis and through Spirit all these years has always been that in the best way that can be put, God created man, right? And man itself relates to the image of God, but not through the aspect of appearance, but capability. And that's what we're able to do as creators. So that's what I can share relating to that.
Can I, again, thank you very much for passing the mic. All right, so let's look at the universe, for example, and try to think of how many different intelligences or beings are in the entire universe. And I would say that that number is immeasurable, actually. But on planet Earth, we kind of made superheroes of specific races. Like we have from Sirius, we have the Pleiadians, Arcturians, Reptilians, Lyrans. You have the Greys, the Mantids. We have these like very Draco, thank you. We have very specific superheroes, I'll call them. Supervillains, superheroes. But really there's infinite of these intelligences. So why do we almost like deify or demonize certain groups that we've been talking about for many generations? I believe the tinkering that you're describing allows different soul consciousness from other different groups to incarnate in physical forms. So we can say, Adronis, you're very serious. Look at that face. He's from Sirius too, I guess. But so what I'm saying is that I believe that because we are aware of these star ancestors that have tinkered with us, they've changed our genetics in a way where these beings could then incarnate and be walking among us in human form. And I think that is also part of the reason for the tinkering for these higher beings or other dimensional beings or other planetary beings. What is the experience to be human? And now they can have that experience.
And just
So-
to add one last thing as well, too, before we get back to it. Jonas has also talked about, in a session as well, too, is that many of you humans put so much credit towards all of us when really the credit should be going back to you. Because, again, you put so much credit and say, oh, the Pleiadians are this, or the Syrians are this, and et cetera, et cetera. It's like they're getting all the glory, but they actually haven't really done as much of what humankind has done throughout the entire time of being on this planet, right? They really have made an impact. We've made an impact on this world, whether negative or positive in that way. But again, we like to kind of look at these, like what Jason was saying, is like these ETs, and thinking that they deserve, all this deification, or the opposite as well, too. And that's not the case, really. Again, the best way I can put it, and like I said, if you agree with me or not, that's okay. None of these beings can compare to the capability of creation as humanity. We are the most powerful race there is. And if there was another powerful race, I'd tell you guys, there isn't, right? Humanity itself has the greatest contrast, has the greatest capability, has the greatest creativity than any other race. I've actually connected with many others as well, too, and they said they are amazed what they see humanity create on this planet. They're amazed that we create tables the way we do. We create chairs the way we do. We make music the way we do. We dance the way we do. They're boggled how we're able to do that. Because when you meet a lot of these beings themselves, they're great, they're wonderful, they can be friendly, they can be playful, but they do not have that contrast as man. And that's one of the most beautiful things about us. We don't see that. But there will come a point whenever that does happen, where we open up to the Star Brotherhood, we're going to see exactly what these beings can do in regards to contrast, and they're going to be amazed at what we still see us do that we've taken for granted for. So again, this is where I say humanity really is the greatest race that has ever been.
And there will be a Trump casino on Mars.
Oh, yeah. Right next to a Christian church.
America.
Okay, so with that being said, I'm familiar with you go into meditation, you can do DNA activation, stuff of that nature, specifically with your own work that you guys do for yourselves. Are there aspects of working with your own DNA, having experiences with these other species, that you're able to kind of push that further because you have more knowledge about what you're working with?
I've never worked with my own DNA.
Oh, okay.
I don't need to do that, right? The whole idea is that you just continue to evolve yourself in any way that you want. You want to meditate, go ahead and meditate. You don't want to meditate, then go ahead and don't meditate. Do something that really feels that is advancing you, evolving you in that way. We get a lot of this new agey stuff and thinking that you got to activate your 144 strands of DNA, you got to do this and blah, blah, blah. And really you guys think you're doing that, but you're not. Right? The whole key here is that I've only met one person who has 12 strands of DNA. Only one person. He's in Japan. Right? Sorry, Jason. Maybe you have 6 strands. I don't know. But he has incredible amounts of capability. He can create astral bodies. He can create manifested holograms. He is able to connect telepathically, empathically. And Jason, yes, like I said, you're maybe 6. But like I said, everybody thinks that they have their DNA activated in the 12 strands. And I'm sorry to say, a lot of them do not. So the whole idea here is that, yes, you have to meditate. You want to meditate if you want to. You got to build up your mental aptitude. But you have to look at these yogis and these monks and these ancients in that particular way to see exactly that they've spent lifetimes after lifetimes building themselves up. And many of them don't even have 12 strands, right? So it's more than just the idea of DNA activation. Again, we get into that new agey philosophy, but that's another topic in itself.
So you're telling me that weekend workshop I took didn't activate my 24 strands of DNA?
You took a weekend workshop to activate 24 strands of DNA?
Yes.
Well, you got ripped.
Ripped the DNA.
Workshop.
It wasn't my workshop. I don't teach anything like that.
But I have had experience with DNA before, and I'm the biggest skeptic even of myself, but it was an experience where I was holding a crystal and I fell asleep with it, and I saw this thing. My vision of it was like a strand in space. It looked like a rope, like a muddy clay rope, and then this rope twisted, and as this rope twisted, the clay just exploded away from the rope, And when that explosion happened, I felt that explosion like go through my entire body. And I saw this like beautiful light crystalline strand, like a rope. It just looked like a rope. And I jumped out of bed, like, because it really, like I felt that kind of explosion. And I heard a voice, be still, we're activating dormant DNA. And I knew it was some type of connection with like the multi-dimensional connection through a crystal. It's only happened to me once. And I believe that we have different strands. I don't know, because I know we have a lot of junk DNA. And it may, DNA may activate different times in the life to connect you to maybe different frequencies, different information, different memories, or different beings. I don't know the exact purpose of it, but when it's needed, I think it just happens. Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. Like I said, it's not about you trying to, oh, okay, I'll push really hard. Hey, 3 strands. Oh, I'll push really hard. Okay, 4 strands. Oh, okay, I got to take a break. You know, it is the idea, like what Jason said. It's like he basically got the message to be still because they are activating it. So it comes through the idea of when they feel you're ready. And whoever they are, we can never really say. But there's something that is indeed around us that can work on activating. So I'm not sure if that's answering your question, but.
And I don't know what it did. Okay. I have no idea what that DNA did or means or what that is. All I know is I had that experience. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Real fast, and this is a little comical. So in Hinduism, they've got some blue gods, and they'll be like, oh no, he's blue because his aura is blue, and part of me is just like, no, he's an alien. Thoughts?
Oh, I want to answer. Go for it.
Okay, look at different cultures, and I'll just give you a physiological standpoint of why people are blue and green, especially when you look at Osiris. Okay, Osiris is blue or Osiris is green. He is the god of the underworld. He is the god of the dead. He's always depicted as a mummy. He is dead. Have you ever seen a dead body? They're blue and green. Okay, so usually when they depict a god from the underworld or a god that's from the other side or a past loved one, they would depict them green or blue because that was their symbol of death. Am I starting a riot again? Okay.
It's true. That's answered well. That's good. So
Is that good?
it's great. Okay.
Well, what I learned is that there was a blue race, and they had what we'd call superconscious abilities, and that they blew themselves up with a, technological explosion, like whatever, in India, and they all like blew up. I don't even know when at this exact moment. And they were like really physical beings, but they are mostly gone at this point.
Well, we actually do have pigmentation of blue. And you've seen news stories of people that have taken too much colloidal silver,
they turn the blue guy.
and they turn into blue guys.
Yeah.
Because we do have that. What's that? Blue person? Well, once they saw that guy, they're not touching any.
The colloidal silver producer right there. Defending your company.
I'm sorry. But we do have this type of thing that could occur in our skin pigmentation, and who knows? Who knows? You also turn blue when you hold your breath for too long.
Only once in a blue moon.
There you go.
All right.
Well done. Well done.
All right.
Yeah, a lot of the different races in that way that may be in different colors of
Starting all the riots.
colors of pigmentations often have to do again with the solar radiation as well too. Like the planet that they're on, the sun, that's giving off all the rays. Sometimes that can determine one's own skin pigmentation. 'Cause everyone can be different. If that particular being came off that planet and came here, yeah, there'd have to be certain adjustments made. Would they remain blue? It's hard to say. Like again, this is just all information we haven't really been able to scrutinize too much. But is it possible? Sure.
And I've also heard that the human body is one of the most resilient bodies for different planets. So what if, let's say, for example, we were taken from ET and to put on another planet, and like what you just said, has different elements in the soil, has different vegetation and meat, different radiation from their star, and they will turn a different color, green, blue, whatever color. It's just the environment and the adaptability of the human body in that environment will change it to that color or skin tone. So it's entirely possible.
And of course, we're getting into walk-ins and ensoulment. Now, that's a different story. So basically, where again, a host body may decide to, the soul in that body may decide to leave this life, and another soul comes into that body having ensoulment and a walk-in experience. So that soul, for example, could be maybe this Andromedan that is pale blue in that way. And there are certain forms of characteristics that can therefore forge into that body. There may be a changing of facial shape. There may be a skin pigmentation change as well too, because that soul that's coming into that body is giving that information to the cells of that body and creating that different forms of calibration. And I've seen this with some walk-ins that I've talked to as well too. They would show me some older pictures of them. Their face looks really, really different. And compared to right now, maybe they have like more defined cheekbones or something of that nature. Their eyes are a bit wider or a bit larger. This does happen because every time a new soul comes into the body, you're noticing changes. So again, that too can happen pertaining to just walk-in and ensoulment, but that too is another story.
Okay, this question is for Brad. Yesterday, Adronis said something about you really need to embrace God more. Okay, and there's only like one God, and God is the person that created us, not these other races. Okay, so two-part question. What does God, let's say, look like or feel like? And then what are some tips that we can take away that we can embrace God more other than maybe praying? Like, what can we do to feel closer to God?
Well, you've never really been apart from God. That's the whole important thing. When you're looking at God, it is everything that the modernized religions have not said, right? So it is the idea that God is love, but love is not God, right? God is everything that you can represent in the most graceful, beautiful, compassionate, wonderful way possible. One thing God is not is angry. One thing God is not is vengeful. One thing God is not is wrathful. That is not the true nature of God. I can only speak on my experiences because my interpretation of what I believe the God will be could be completely different than any of yours. So, I mean, basically whenever I've wanted to connect with the mother, I've seen this kind of like empress-like figure, but that's just my interpretation of what I would see as the mother. I would basically be almost like a newborn baby cuddled back into her arms again. That's just my interpretation. And can I say that's God? I don't know. But I feel this love, I feel this great compassion, I feel this joy. And even when I've worked with the healing code cards and when I've always said, Spirit, God, bring your energy into these cards, and I try them and they're working amazingly. They work with other people, and people are giving testimonials for that as well too. I can only testify to what I feel is God. I can't tell you guys what God is because that defeats the purpose, because then you'd rely on me so much to think, oh, Brad knows what God is and I don't. Then I become arrogant, right? I'm not here to create a religion. I don't think we'll ever understand God. No one ever has. Even the great masters still don't understand God. You start talking to Jesus, you start talking to Buddha, you start talking to Krishna, you talk to all these masters, they still can't see the idea of God. The idea of God's creations is not God. That's like if I painted a picture and I put that on the wall, is that Brad? No, that's just a very small particle pertaining to my creation. I can never define myself by the idea of a work. Right? That's only going to be a particle of yourself. And we're particles of that nature to what God is pertaining to creation. So I don't think we'll ever understand God. But that's the whole excitement of connecting to God in your life.
And I'll just give a very easy way that each one of us can have that connection to God. And it's just simply through honoring. And when I say honoring, honor the water you drink, honor the food, honor where you live, honor the land you're on. Okay, if you're in that kind of state of mind where you have gratitude for the elements of creation around you, you're giving honor to yourself and gratitude to yourself as well, because you are part of that creation, you're part of that whole. And to live in that harmony, you're honoring that, what we call, in my opinion, God. That's what we call God, is literally everything. everything is God. It's in everything around us. So if we honor everything around us and ourselves, that is being in that connection with God is my truth.
Brad, were you aware of the conversation that Adronis, well, the information that he shared with us about space? And
About it
can
being
you-
an ocean, yeah.
Yes. Was he saying there's actual water in space? Okay.
Because again, you see this in NASA photos, you even see this in NASA reports, that the sun is spewing water, right? It's not just the idea of a hot ball of fire. There's water coming out of the sun. So water, and there's even massive reports about astronauts drowning in outer space. That actually an astronaut nearly drowned in outer space. If you're looking at the idea of space as a vacuum, it doesn't work, right? If everything's just sucking itself up, what are we going to do? How are the astronauts going to go outside of their ships and do all this work? If it's just a vacuum, they're going to get sucked into, what are they going to get sucked into? What's sucking them, right? Maybe it's NASA that sucks.
Exactly. That's
Your
my
vacuum
point.
sucks, NASA. Yeah.
So
But
why-
yeah, absolutely. Water in space. That's the idea.
Why has that information been withheld from us?
It hasn't been withheld. Look at the very first
How many
book
people
of the
in the room
Bible.
know that?
Okay, Genesis. God again said, "Let there be light," and this moved across the waters. How can it move across the waters if Earth wasn't created yet? So the waters representing that of the cosmos. It's telling us in the very first chapter of the Bible that again, let there be light, sound, through the process of that vibration, creating light, let there be light that moved across the waters. So again, we're looking into sound vibration with waters, or we're looking in somatics in that particular way,
I
right?
think that a lot of us may not have interpreted and put together that perspective, because I wasn't
You
aware
learn
of
everything new each day, right?
that. So the point is, that debunks that we went to the moon.
Well, here's the thing. It debunks in regards to how we've interpreted going to the moon, because that, in that sense, is a stage. Stanley Kubrick, yes, absolutely. But, yes, humanity has actually been to the moon earlier than that. There's all kinds of different stuff upon the moon to which man or bankers have actually occupied. Going back since like the late 40s, early 50s, they were taken up there, not through their own particular tech.
But why can't
but through
that
their interventions.
exploration be shared with us? I mean,
Because
that
why
be,
would they want to share it with you? They don't give a damn about you.
'Cause they-
All they really care about is being in their time in the sun, and everybody else will feed off the crusts. They don't have to share that information, because as soon as that's exposed, they're saying, well, what about us? Why aren't we going up there? And that, again, throws everything that we feel we know out the window. And that is them losing their power. Right? So again, you put too much faith in your government. You think your government cares about you. Sorry to say, guys, they don't give a damn about you.
Oh, I never
You know,
believed
it's about the idea that they want your money, they want your obedience, they want your faithfulness, they want your power. That's all they want. You know, if we had a very loving, honest government, we would not have the systems that you have, right?
And that's
so a
the
lot of this is just the idea of them spending their time in the sun, where everybody else is cast in shadow.
And that's the problem, in addition to what we were talking about with the atrocities and all of the negative things that have been done to humanity. You can't say that there hasn't been interference in the ascension process because of the lack of truth from our leaders.
There's been intervention that has happened. The whole idea, as soon as the post-atomic era has happened, there has been an entire ground crew effort for all of these different souls to come here upon the planet, because they have been called here to come into human bodies and say, we're now going to fix this. That has been the effort since the post-atomic era.
But hasn't the harvest been kind of held back and put on delay, and it's taken longer and longer?
You really
and
need to
there's
look
some
at the
disappointment with
the
how-
Egyptian
what the numbers are.
timeline. The Egyptian timeline really plays this out very, very well. People who have actually been able to do what's known as the Egyptian pyramid measurement. There's a guy named John Van Elken. I would suggest you look into him. His research is really, really great. And he basically was able to work together with his research to discover an Egyptian pyramid timeline by using what's known as the pyramid inch and being able to measure the measurements of the chamber, of the king's chamber, to actually create a timeline that accurately predicted everything. At the end of this timeline, guess when it ends? 2038, right? This is what I would suggest you look at, is that there has already been, for thousands and thousands of years, the entire prediction accurately of everything that we are going to experience in this age. Now, I basically made the prediction of 2037, 2038. I was not even aware of John Van Elken until after I made the video about that. And a friend of mine says, Brad, you gotta look into John Van Elken, because he said 2038 is the end of the Egyptian timeline. So there can be the idea of the feelings of delays, but delays have been part of the plan as well. You can't surprise God. You can't surprise spirit, right? So really everything that's happened is happening based upon the cycle that has been predicted through that timeline just by itself. Jason, anything you want to share?
No, America.
Good. Young lady had something. Go ahead, young lady.
Oh, now?
Yeah.
Okay. A couple things. Thoughts and opinions, or what's going on with Project Looking Glass and CERN and transference of consciousness, if any of you know about that.
Not me.
John, how about you?
Yeah. Project Looking Glass.
Oh, you got your mic.
Oh,
Yeah. Only my work.
sorry, I can't use the Canadian mic.
That's right.
My goodness.
I don't want to start another.
We need your
Jeez.
citizenship, man, before you even touch our mic.
You know, I had a little boy when I was when one of my little boys was about like 5 years old. He was working on figuring out how to have a time machine, and he asked me while he was figuring this out in his head. He asked me. He said, "Is a time machine possible? Can I?" And I said something to him. I don't know where it came from, but I said to him, "I don't think time machine is possible, but you can create some kind of a window, some kind of a window machine thing that you can actually look through it and look at different timelines." Well, it turns out that apparently there was a lot of technology, I think Tesla technology. I think it was Tesla technology. Jason's big thing is Tesla, so I would have thought that you would be aware about this, the Looking Glass, because I believe it was originally Tesla technology. But anyway, Looking Glass is a project that apparently there have been bad actors like the CIA and the cabal who have had this Looking Glass technology, which allows them to look into different timelines. Some people thought that the technology allows you to look into definite timelines, into what is definitely going to be the timeline for certain future events. It turns out that there's been a lot of raw data that Hillary Clinton was given access to this technology in 2016. In 2016. And it's the reason why she was so certain that she was going to be president of the United States. And it's the reason why she was so certain that she was going to be president of the United States, because she actually saw herself using Looking Glass technology that was brought to her by the CIA, and they showed her herself as president. And that's the reason why she tweeted out that Time magazine congratulations to herself as the first woman president the night of the election. And it's crazy stuff, but there's a lot of separate independent sources on Looking Glass technology. But it turns out that when they gave her the Looking Glass technology, it didn't show her what the definite timeline was going to be. It showed her what she wanted the timeline to be. And she did not know that. And she found out later she was tricked. She was tricked, and it was too late. It was too late for her to do anything about it. So that's the Looking Glass technology. And I believe the Looking Glass technology is now in the hands of the Alliance, the Allied forces, who are using it for humanity's improvement instead of for an evil witch to reign over humanity. So now I'll turn it over to my favorite debunker, Jason, quit. Tell them.
No, I'm not.
Start the riot.
No.
Oh, God. He's going to do it.
I'm not going to do nothing.
Yes.
Well, you debate. Well, while you guys debate, I guess I'll talk about CERN a little bit as well too. Yeah, I mean, CERN's one of their biggest intentions was to basically shift into a reality where a lot of what their agendas were would come to life, right? So you guys look at the Mandela effect. That's a perfect example about shifting through, micro wormholes, whatever they call it, different black holes, and seeing these different changes happening together. So with CERN, it was all basically an intention to utilize it in its own intention to basically try and skip past the harvest and try and find a reality where their agendas would be fulfilled. So a lot of it is just basically looping through different dimensions and trying to discover a reality that they feel they could go into for those states of achievement. But of course, they've never been able to do that because there's a lot more quote-unquote unseen forces that prevent that from happening. It's very well sanitized, the idea of shifting into different dimensions that we know we're not meant to go into. That give you enough time?
All right.
No, you answered.
Okay.
He answered.
There's one about transferring of consciousness. Are you referring to like the Avatar movie? It depends. Is transferring of consciousness is kind of vague, right? There's the transcendence of consciousness, right? There's transferring of consciousness, like what we saw in the Avatar movie about being able to go into like this pod and then going into different brainwave states and actually putting yourself into a different body. I've talked to people who have actually been able to do that. In fact, if you guys are familiar with the Yael, there is a client that I was actually able to talk to who was able to go into a synthesized body, basically had artificial chakra centers. He was able to open his eyes and go inside this Yael artificial body and walk around this spaceship. But it was very, very different feeling. Like he had very vivid feelings about everything, but it was very limited. He actually didn't have any taste buds, so he couldn't taste any food. So basically, he had this artificial body prepared for him so that he could interact in the physical aboard a Yael spacecraft. That would be one example of the idea of a transferring of consciousness. But like I said, there's different types altogether. Stasis bodies, yeah, absolutely. There's many of you guys that even have stasis bodies on other ships. And when you basically leave this life, it's quite possible many of you return to the stasis bodies.
Yes, and there's also another theory out there where we talk about actual ships that are conscious ships, and in the ships they have different space suits, which are bodies, and the ship itself could transfer its consciousness to the bodies to navigate the different places they go. So I've heard stories where they've come in contact with, let's say, like a being that, let's say, was scary to humans, and that being would kind of run away, and then suddenly a very beautiful being would come back to talk to them. But it's really like the same consciousness, but they just jumped into a different suit that's more pleasing to you. Yeah. So maybe one day we'll have a closet full of Arcturian suits, Palladian suits, and we'll just jump in them and go play around.
I do see that in the future, yeah. Yeah, I see us. I was meditating on that as well too, and saying, hey, is there another body I can switch? Maybe I can be female for a day. I said, no. You got to stick with this body. We're not at that point yet. But at some point, yes, you'll be able to have like many male bodies, many female bodies, and you'll be able to jump into them all, just like an avatar, like what you see.
I thought we were going to talk about Project Looking Glass and Man in the High Castle. That's as an example of Project Looking Glass. Great show, great illustration of the whole Project Looking Glass alternate timeline possibilities for anyone who's ever seen that show. It was from Philip K. Dick, and that was a great show. Man in the High Castle, if you get a chance to see it.
Okay, I learned recently that probably maybe 20-something years ago, maybe a little bit less, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a similar agenda to the 9/11, that many thousands of women, perhaps millions, that were pregnant, were given a prenatal vitamin that ended up causing their babies that were born boys to feel like they were girls, and vice versa. And it was actually caused by this prenatal vitamin. So then it was, once enough of these women came forward, and it was stopped, but it was for 10 years that it was actually given to women as a prenatal vitamin. And my question is, A, do you know about it? And B, do you know about it as a possible agenda, tinkering with DNA that way? And also, is there anything positive that you can imagine that could come out of this?
I've never heard of anything like that, no.
Everything from Big Pharma is bad.
That I know.
Simple as that.
No, I've never heard of a prenatal vitamin doing anything like that, so that's never come in any of my sessions or anything.
And there's no limit to the evils that they will commit against us.
But I wouldn't be surprised if something like that did exist. So. The technology they have and all these advanced levels is mind-boggling. So it wouldn't surprise me if something like that.
It seems
appeared.
like there's legislation that just automatically fell in place to kind of be there in a way supportive for the situation, which I find almost like it was like another agenda, because now all of a sudden there's different situations in place that, I don't know, it could be something to create chaos, but I'm just wondering if there's anything positive from it.
If you want a girl and want a boy, there you go. I don't know. I don't know. Like, it all depends upon a person's perspective, really.
Joe.
Joe? Oh, okay.
Run, Sue, run.
I didn't see.
I just had a question of what you guys would see as the anticipated dates of the end time harvest. Okay. I was trying to see what your guys' interpretation of the end time harvest in terms of an expected date, and then
I've already said 2037, 2038.
Okay, so it's still pretty far off.
Yep.
And then would there be our veil, on our consciousness be lifted up to
It's
see?
very much like what Jason was talking about today about the mist, right? Very much like that, because it's almost like a revealing and clarity of a membrane that basically clears, and now you're in a whole different reality you never saw before. It's like lifting the veil in that way. We don't really know how it's going to go down. I have not really got information about it. I have heard that from 2037 there may be 3 days of darkness, but other than that, that's really all I know.
So that would start the golden age?
Yeah, I've heard that, the Native Americans have gone through the 3 days of darkness before in the past, and they know all about it, so it's no big surprise to them. I've been told by Spirit that around 2037, 2038, or maybe around late 2037 would be the 3 days of darkness,
So
and probably around the end of December.
So the transitory period starting now through that time would be the transitory period?
That's what I've been told, yes. Like I said, it's not my perspective, it's Spirit's, so.
All right, I know I've asked this question before, but I'm not letting it go. Clones. Okay. Brad says clones are stupid and they don't have a long lifespan. Can you explain that? And the other guys, give me your opinion about, is cloning real and what is our capability at this point? Because from what I've researched, it's like it's been going on for a really long time.
What I'm aware of is that if you guys are familiar with the MIBs, the Men in Black, that's the closest approximation that I'm aware of pertaining to cloning experiments in that way. I have heard people cloning world leaders and stuff. Hillary Clinton may have had it happen. I've heard about that as well too, that they may have short lifespans and they have a very limited consciousness. It's kind of like programming cyborgs, like basically programmable life forms. What they would basically refer to as certain types of greys who are cyborgs, who basically don't have souls in the body. They would be operated by like a microprocessor or a microchip in their brain, and that they're basically piloted in that way. That could be something. I don't know if Clinton had that happen to her. The only ones that I'm aware of really are the MIBs. And what? What was the other one?
I want to know why Sue is so interested in this topic and why she looks different every time I supposedly see her. It's just
Second.
a coincidence to me, that's all.
And look, this is just my opinion. I can't give you any solid answers, but I believe clones as a human, absolutely possible. But I would say souls inhabit vessels. It's just as simple as that. And if you create a vessel, no matter if it's a clone or not, there will be some essence of soul and consciousness that will come and inhabit that vessel. So it's just like a twin, right? Two identical twins, two different souls. Even though they're identical, it's two different people. Yes, you said Pete and repeat? That's like my joke, jeez.
Well, it has to be a certain soul in certain ways because bodies have their own certain types of symphonies with it. So a body has to be coherent to a certain degree of a body that, or soul has to be coherent to a certain body that has that nervous system attunement. So what I've heard, and again, Adronis has talked about it, says there are some clone bodies that can have souls. There are ones in that sense that are completely soulless. So like I said, they're programmed like a radio frequency in that way. And it's almost like just looking at a puppet where you're just able to control its movements, you're able to give it some certain forms of limited speech. The closest thing I could put it to would almost like AI in that way. But they're very stupid. Yes, this is what I've said. Because like, again, if we actually had a person to point to and say, okay, that person's a clone, then we can certainly analyze that person. Have I met a clone? I can't say I can. I've only just basically shared what I've received from what Adronis has shared, relating to, yes, some clones can be soulful, but there has to be some type of relationship to that original host body and their soul, because we all have that kind of unique snowflake design. That's what I've been told as well, too. Yeah, they have a very short lifespan. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'll just
Yeah, don't turn over your DNA material to anybody.
As Adronis was talking to you about that the other day, is that you would have certain forms of memories pertaining to that other host, right? So whenever you have a clone body that is identical to yours, you would actually be able to experience vividly the idea of what that clone is going through. So you would actually feel like you're living in two bodies simultaneously because its own genome is identical to yours, right? I don't feel that's your case. I feel your case is very different. No, I do not feel you have a clone body at all. I know, but I'm telling you anyways. From what I can sense from you, I do not detect any form of clone body flowing through you. Yeah. So again, the worst thing is the human mind when it's connected to fear, right? We make not only mountains out of molehills, we make planets out of them, right? So be very careful about how far you are willing to take your mind relating to fear, because that's the true rabbit hole.
So you had previously mentioned the 3 days of darkness. I don't recall where I heard this, but I heard that during those 3 days is when the magnetic poles will switch. Is that?
That's what I've heard too. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That I don't know. I feel like there's some sort of activity that's going to happen with the magnetic poles. I don't think it's going to be it's not going to be a disaster. And I know people think that as soon as you hear about 3 days of darkness, it's going to be a disaster. I've even looked into interviews of what the Native Americans say. So this is not a disaster. It's not a horrible thing, but people will make it into a horrible thing. It's no more different than being inside the womb again, right? Because we're just not used to that idea of 3 days of darkness. People are going to make the worst out of it. And it's very much in the idea that when you're in that state, it's like being in a dark room. Have you guys ever been in a dark room meditation? everything relating to your thoughts feel very vivid and everything starts to come to life. Well, some people may just basically injure themselves severely based upon those states of fear. But life is going to continue on even if those 3 days of darkness happen. Spirits tell me, Brad, this is definitely going to happen. All right. It's not my perspective. But again, if that does happen, and I'm not going to doubt spirits saying that it won't, then life will still carry on. We'll still have a life on this planet. Again, those that go into the harvest will go into the harvest. Those that partition themselves into these different realities will experience those realities. Life will continue.
Of course, with discernment, because we have no way of validating whether or not it's 100% true.
We certainly don't. No. I mean, all I'm really getting at is just my premonitions from Spirit. I don't doubt it, but I'm just looking at it in that way to say, guys, this is not my perspective. This is Spirit's. And I knew when I got that prediction and Spirit's saying, Brad, you got to expose this. I'm like, oh, come on. Are they going to believe me? It's like, it doesn't matter if they believe you. Just get it out there, plant a seed, let them know, right?
Not necessarily.
I'm even a guy as well to say, guys, don't get so transfixed on dates. And here I am giving you guys a date, 2037, 2038. And I mean, that's just what I've been told to say. I don't have any other excuse for that.
It had also come along with the information that the planet would start rotating the other direction. I have no.
No. But basically, here's the thing. The Earth is stationary. The Earth doesn't revolve around the sun. It hasn't revolved around the sun for nearly 100,000 years. This is what I've received. Earth is stationary and everything else revolves around us. So I've connected this with Spirit as well too. If we actually revolved around the sun, what we would know is the constellations in the sky would change. You would have different vantage points from other stars, but that has not changed in the longest time. But guys, I know you're going to blow up your brains here when I'm saying this, but I'm telling you guys, this is just what I've received from Spirit. Our planet does not revolve around the sun. It is completely stationary and everything else revolves around us.
There was a video I watched the other day that was explaining the theory of biocentrism. I don't recall how it was said, but instead of heliocentric, it's biocentric. So life and consciousness are the thing that constitute the continuation of all things.
Yeah, it's cycles. It's cycles. Life cycles. You got it. Yep, exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Like I was pretty blown away by this as well too. Even Michael Tallinger, who I've talked to as well too, agrees with the idea of a stationary Earth in that way. There's not a lot of things that Michael and I agree on. There's some things we do, but I was really blown away that he was able to discover this as well too.
Do the pilots know this?
Do the what? Pilots of what? Pilots of what? Why would they know about it? NASA, never a straight answer. Right? This is just what I've received, guys. Whether you take it or not, it's up to you. But I've received the idea that Earth is stationary. It has not moved around the Earth or around the sun for nearly 99,000 years, and it has to do with the idea of time dilation. It has to do with the idea of the theme of what we're experiencing on this planet. It has to do with the nature of our time, even with the nature of our day as well, too. So our planet has been stationary for nearly 99,000 years. We don't know when it's going to move again.
Would our planet be the only one like that?
Yep. Everything else revolves around the Earth. But that's the kind of thing. It's almost like a contradiction on top of a contradiction on top of a appeal. Right? Yeah. I don't know. Again, all I can say is this is what Spirit has shared with me, guys. So take it or leave it.
Last question.
Okay, you guys start talking now.
Okay, you'd spoke of the relationship between God and love, and I guess kind of in the subject regarding love, I was thinking of as far as like we all have a path to walk, so then the idea of having a purpose even before we're born here, or there being a God purpose for each and every one of us. I was curious your idea with regards to love in like the collective consciousness and
well, the best way to put it is that God is love, but love is not God. Right? Love is not all that God is. Like I said, if I was to paint a picture and put it on the wall, is that all Brad is? No. It may be a very loving painting, but there's more to me than that. Again, like I said, what God is not is anything wrathful or anything vengeful or anything that represents lack. God does not play with lack at all. And God's trying to get us out of lack. And that's exactly why these universal laws exist the way they do, because they realize that the more we go into lack, the more that we're sabotaging ourselves, the more that we're going into that state of conflict. And that the universal laws exist to show us exactly when we're going into those deeper levels of conflict and how to get out of them at the same time. So when you're working together with God, like I said, you have to give your own understanding of that, because God has personal relationship with every one of you. God has built you so intricately, so dynamically, so amazingly, so infinitely that you can't even fathom it. So, and he has put so much of that energy into creating you. It's your heavenly parent. Like if you look at your physical parents, some of you may have really great relationships with that. What's stopping you from having a heavenly relationship with the perfection of God? What's stopping you? That's the question I have for you guys.
So when it comes to like the norms,
So there's nothing that
we
exists
spoke of.
within God that represents lack. Well, wouldn't that be the perfect parent? Maybe we should look into that heavenly parent. All right?
So when we
That's how I see it.
had spoke of like the norms, like the people in our life who aren't as on to all this that's going on, could love be a good focus to get them more?
Love is also a good way of
towards-
saying that I trust my people who I love to lead their own lives. They don't need me to fix them. I don't fix anybody. If people wants to come to me to ask a question, I'm happy to share information. I'm happy to guide, but I'm not here to fix any of you. To me, none of you need to be fixed. You're perfect the way you are. And that's, again, just a part of the compliment that really you can look at it like God is playing a character, and that's part of us. This universe really just exists as God's mind, and we're just exploring more about the parent's mind as well as ourselves in the process. And this is also another big thing as well, too. When we're looking at life, it's not about you. It's about everybody else that's a part of the life around you, because you get to know yourself a lot by listening to what other people, because it's kind of like what Adronis was talking about before, about when you start meeting these new people in your life, you start feeling new revelations about yourself you never thought before. You know, we kind of get out of this selfishness, and I think the New Age movement puts this into a lot of perspective about the idea of saying you can manifest what you want, you can manifest your heart desires, you can manifest this big mansion, you can manifest this big car. It's greed, 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 right? That's the whole idea of the feeling of this manipulation with New Age movement. So I think the whole idea is that just spend time on yourself when you need correction. When you're not needing to correct yourself, work with somebody else. Help people out in the best way that you can, right? That's compassion. Okay? I'm done. No more questions. Ask these two guys.
I want to thank everybody for coming tonight, and I want to thank you, Brad Johnson. Yay! Jason Quitt and John DeSouza. Thank you guys so much for coming. Really appreciate your participation. Thank you all. Thank you.